So far throughout this course, we've been very focused on running commands against the SQL Server. So getting data out, running system commands, even creating logins so that we can connect remotely. But we can take this a lot further because SQL Server will allow you to run commands on the underlying operating system. So when we can do that, we can go beyond just mere SQL injection and start to actually use that as an attack vector to do other things within the target network. So for example, we could do this. exec xp_command shell, so this is going to allow us to run commands on the underlying system, and then the command we'd like to run. So let's just ping my website and see what happens. And now we see a similar error to what we saw in the last clip, which is simply that XP command shell is blocked by default. And again, in modern versions of SQL Server, this is a secure by default position. This command can start to do really nasty things, and much of the time it's never even needed by the database. So why have it on? Microsoft now keeps it off. But we're going to turn it back on in order to demonstrate this attack, because XP command shell is one example that comes up very frequently when looking at SQL injection attacks. The fortunate reality for those of us defending systems is that it's not going to work on a modern version of SQL Server unless this command has been run. So I'm just going to paste it in from the clipboard, and it's very similar to the one we saw in the last clip. It's just going to reconfigure XP command shell in order to turn it on. So let's now select that and we'll run it. That's now on. Let's go back up and run the XP command shell to ping my website, and now we can see that it's executing the query. And here's the result. So it's just pumped out one row per line of result that would normally be pumped out to the command prompt. So in this case, it's actually given us 12 rows of data. So the significance of this is that we've been able to run a command on the operating system itself. And you could easily pass this in via a SQL injection attack too. But of course we can do much more than just run a ping. Let's actually write to the local file system. So let's pipe this result out into c:\temp ping.txt. Let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, so something has just run successfully. We've got a null output because it's not actually going to return a result from that command, it's actually just writing it to the text file. So how might we get this back out? Well, we're running commands on the underlying operating system. We effectively have a shell. Let's just type it out. So we'll simply change the ping to a type command and run that. And here are our results. And in fact, we could see this execute immediately. I haven't sped it up, so it hasn't executed the ping. Rather, it's pulled the contents of the file off the local system and pumped it back out to the interface here. This should really start to give you a sense of how powerful these injection attacks can become, because now we're actually pulling files off the local system. I do want to look at this in two ways though. One of them is, yes, it's massively powerful. You can do some serious stuff with this. But the other is, you cannot do it by default. Someone must have compromised the security of their SQL Server in order to do this. Now that may be because they legitimately want the SQL Server to be able to run operating system commands, but that's probably a pretty bad design decision if it was consciously made for reasons just like this. And of course, even being able to run this, you still have to have both an injection risk in the app and have the app connecting to the database server with an account that has sufficient privileges to run this sort of command. So there are a number of different things that have to line up in order to mount this attack. But it does happen, and you do see XP command shell used extensively as examples of just how damaging SQL injection can be. Now there's one more thing I want to look at using this style of attack, and that's SQL injection for network reconnaissance. So let's go and take a look at that now.